The wind swept the leaves above his head into a sudden tumult of agitation, making him shiver. Somewhere in the midst of that fury-filled rustling, he thought he caught the faintest whisper of a word. Haku. He turned around to stare at Ben. Did you say something? Ben's eyes were wide. No, why? Haku stood motionless, his heart pounding. This was ridiculous. Feeling suddenly angry at himself for the fear he was feeling, he began to stalk in the direction of the village with the full intention of leaving this accursed place behind and returning to the inn. He had taken only a couple of steps before he realized that the ground beneath his feet was glowing. The light seemed to come from the fog itself, but it was definitely brightest down around his feet. Freezing in reaction to that impossibility, he groped reflexively for the hilt of the sword belted at his waist. Haku. The whisper came from behind him this time, but when he turned his head, the only thing he saw was Ben standing there. The other man was beginning to look just a little bit frightened. I heard it too that time, Ben whispered, his eyes wide. Movement in front of Haku made his eyes snap forward again. The light on the ground was growing brighter, somehow without providing any additional illumination. It rose slowly, indistinct through the layers of shifting fog, and began to take shape in front of him. It took him a moment to realize he was looking at the vaguely luminescent outline of a man, barely visible. What the hell? Haku hissed, his hand tightening around the hilt of his sword. The man took a step forward, still hazy and not entirely solid-looking. Haku could make out the shape of old-fashioned armor through the softly glowing fog and what looked like a sheathed broadsword. Rias, the spectral soldier said in a voice that sounded like whispering leaves. I beg of you. Haku glanced over his shoulder at Ben, who was staring at the apparition with a wide-eyed expression of utter astonishment. Haku, he breathed, reaching out to close his fingers around Haku's arm. I think we should get the hell out of here. That plan met with Haku's full approval. He didn't understand anything about what was going on, and that terrified him. As usual when he felt afraid, his instinctive reaction was to lash out. He pulled his sword from its sheath with a ringing echo of hardened steel. The sound was familiar to him, comforting. Stay away from us, he ordered darkly, brandishing the weapon in the apparition's direction. Glancing over his shoulder, he said, Ben, let's go. The words were terse. The spirit, if that's what it was, raised a hand to halt them. You cannot leave, it whispered, its voice strengthening. The mage has awoken us with his offering. If you cannot free us, then you will have to feed us with your souls. The skin at Haku's nape crawled as more lights appeared behind the first, each of them resolving into the ethereal shape of another armored soldier. Within moments, he and Ben were surrounded by what looked like hundreds of them, an entire improbable army of spectral undead. We crave your warmth, the spirit in front of them said, its eyes glowing softly through the fog. In a voice that echoed like a dusty tomb, it added, Eternity is so unbearably cold.